Welcome to this edition of Head to Head. I'm your host, Cam McKinney, and this is episode number 353 of the podcast. And on this episode, I'm telling you what I think the American League will look like this upcoming baseball season. As spring training has started, now I thought would be a good time to preview the upcoming season. So this week I'll start with the American League and next week the National League. Let's go division by division, starting with the one that I think has had the most intriguing offseason, the AL West. For the team that won the division last year, the Houston Astros, they are in a weird transitional phase where they traded away star outfielder Kyle Tucker, lost star infielder Alex Bregman, but have also brought in slugging first baseman Christian Walker. I still believe in the roster, but they are losing more and more of that core, and at some point, that will come back to bite them. I also cannot be the only one that thinks it's weird that they are trying to turn future Hall of Famer Jose Altuve into an outfielder. Like, I don't understand what you are doing there. If he's not very good at second base anymore, move him to first base, move him to third base. I don't know what to tell you, but outfield doesn't really feel like it should be the spot for him. The team in the division that I think had the best offseason is the LA Angels, who have signed a starting pitcher in Yusei Kikuchi, brought in a power bat in Jorge Soler, a high-quality closer in Kenley Jansen, and what I like about this strategy is they went out and got good ball players instead of overspending for the flashiest names, which is something this franchise has done in the past. They brought in real needs, and one guy right now I'm keeping close eyes on is two-time batting champion Tim Anderson. If this guy can make the team and regain his form, that would be a huge boost for the Halos, and this is a team in desperate need of good luck. They haven't had it in a long time. I have a strong belief that this team will be over 500 by year's end, and a lot of that depends on the health of Mike Trout. He's still one of the best players in the game when healthy. The Oakland Athletics spend money like they never have before, bringing in starting pitcher Luis Severino, who had a resurgent year with the Mets, and also brought in reliever Jeffrey Springs and infielder Gio Urshela to go along with their young talent left fielder Brent Rooker, right fielder Lawrence Butler, and closer Mason Miller. My hope is the A's get to have one of their surprise seasons, and hopefully this time get to keep their young talent around much longer than usual. Because you see this time and time with the A's, they have some of the best young players, then those players finally reach their prime, and the A's can no longer afford to keep them. As they change ballparks, I also hope that changes. A team in the division I believe is due for a big bounce back is the Texas Rangers. They have added real offense this season with outfielder Jock Peterson, who has won World Series titles with both the Dodgers and Braves, and third baseman Jake Burger, who is on his third team of his career. He's been overlooked due to the fact he's played for the White Sox and Marlins. I mean, they're adding those bats next to Corey Seager, Marcus Semien, and Adolis Garcia. I believe the X factor is going to be Jacob deGrom. If Jacob deGrom is the old Jacob deGrom, then the Rangers will have a true ace. And even if they don't, they still have Nathan Eovaldi, who is a really reliable starting pitcher as well. For the Texas Rangers, the starting pitching only needs to be decent because I think their offense is going to carry them to success next year. The most maddening team in the AL West is the Seattle Mariners, who have all the starting pitching in the world. George Kirby and Logan Gilbert are in particular special arms, but this team is in desperate need of more offense, though I do have some hope Julio Rodriguez is due for a year where he declares himself the best player in the game. They also have the best hitting catcher in Cal Raleigh, and they are going to have a full season with outfielder Randy Arozarena. There's a chance all 5 teams in the AL West are decent. My prediction, the Texas Rangers win the division, and the big reason is I still believe in Jacob deGrom. Next up is the AL Central, the winner of which last year was the Cleveland Guardians. In this offseason, they traded away second baseman Andres Jimenez, a great defender who had declined offensively in recent years, and first baseman Josh Naylor, who drove in over 100 runs last year. This is a team that is forced to retool all the time. I'm just in kind of wait-and-see mode with them. They still got that elite bullpen led by the best closer in baseball, Emmanuel Clase. And I've long long believed that Jose Ramirez is the best third baseman in the American League and should be considered more of an MVP candidate than he usually is. But offensively, I am really worried about this team. I mean, they have Steven Kwan, who is a good player. Carlos Santana is now back with the Guardians. He's an aging player who is consistent. I'm just not sure this is a team that is going to score enough runs. For the Kansas City Royals, it's all about the continued rise of Bobby Witt Jr., and they are continuing to surround him with talent, bringing in former Rookie of the Year Jonathan India, and they brought in a good closer in Carlos Estevez. I love this team's pitching staff with Michael Wacha and Seth Lugo. I mean, they are reliable arms. Seth Lugo almost won a Cy Young last year, and they have offense outside of Bobby Witt Jr. I mean, they also have Salvador Perez and Vinny Pasquantino. During the second half of baseball last year, the hottest team was the Detroit Tigers because of Cy Young Award winner Tarik Skubal. Now they've added to their pitching staff with Jack Flaherty after trading him away at the trade deadline. They bring him back. Alex Cobb, who is at the very least an innings eater, and reliable relief pitcher Tommy Kahnle. They also added infielder Gleyber Torres. They are managed by AJ Hinch, who I think is one of the best managers in all of baseball. The Minnesota Twins are always a decent team. They have good players, Carlos Correa, Byron Buxton, and Royce Lewis. The problem? Only one of them, Buxton, played in 100 games last year, and I'll spare you me talking about the Chicago White Sox by saying that things can only go up from last year. What I am interested in is to see what ends up happening to the long-term future of outfielder Luis Robert. He's the real deal. What I like about this division, the AL Central, is all the young talent in it. I mean, you have Bobby Witt Jr., you have Tarik Skubal, and this is a division in baseball that everyone is down on year after year because they aren't always the best. I mean, they have had some rough years. The Kansas City Royals have gone through some rough times. The Detroit Tigers have gone through the down periods as well. The Guardians are always in playoff contention but are never given the respect they deserve. It really is a division full of mid-market teams. My prediction for who will win this division is the Detroit Tigers. I'm just super high on them. I think Tarik Skubal will continue to be the dominant pitcher he was last year. I think Jack Flaherty is a good get. He's on a one-year deal basically. He's going to want to prove himself to get that bigger long-term contract. I like the addition of Gleyber Torres, a guy who has been on winning baseball teams in the past. This is a team for me ready to take that next step. Last up is the division that I follow the most, the AL East. With the Yankees, it's hard to say that the team that lost out on Juan Soto had a good offseason, but on paper, bringing in Max Fried, a second ace behind Gerrit Cole, Devin Williams, one of the best closers, outfielder Cody Bellinger, and first baseman Paul Goldschmidt, two former MVPs who one could imagine hitting over 30 home runs thanks to Yankee Stadium. I mean, that's a decent offseason. I like the strategy that Brian Cashman has had since losing out on Soto. It also doesn't hurt that you still have Aaron Judge, who I view as the best player in the sport currently. The rival Red Sox made noise for the first time in quite a long time by bringing in starting pitcher Garrett Crochet and signing all-star third baseman Alex Bregman. They also brought in Dodgers World Series hero Walker Buehler. As a fan of the Red Sox, I'm at a point where I'm ready to say that I believe this team is capable of winning 85 plus games. How much further they will go from there is to be determined. I don't know how excited I should be just yet. I want to see them play regular season games before I get my hopes up. I really do like a 1-2-3 pitching staff that includes Garrett Crochet, Walker Buehler, and Tanner Houck. The concern is, how many innings are you going to get out of Crochet and Walker Buehler? I mean, Crochet has never thrown a lot of innings, and Walker Buehler is a guy who has not been himself over the last few seasons due to injuries. It's great that they brought in outside talent. They needed to do that, but their young players also need to take that next jump up. I'm talking about Tristan Casas, who could be a potential all-star first baseman, and Brayan Bello. I mean, Brayan Bello being good could really solidify that pitching staff. The Toronto Blue Blue Jays were seemingly in on every big free agent and ended up with switch hitter Anthony Santander, closer Jeff Hoffman, and future Hall of Famer Max Scherzer. They also traded for the aforementioned Andres Gimenez. It's a big year for them as a franchise. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is set to become a free agent, and the fear for them must be the idea of losing him to either the Boston Red Sox or the New York Yankees, their hated division rivals. I'm not stupid. I know it's going to come down to money, but I also have to believe that it's going to come down to, does Vladimir Guerrero Jr. feel good about the future of the Toronto Blue Jays? They've had that young talent in the past. They still have Bo Bichette. We just don't know how to feel about the Blue Jays moving forward. I mean, on paper right now, they look like a good baseball team, but they always seem to look like a good baseball team. They have decent starting pitching. I love Kevin Gausman. Jose Barrios is a guy with a lot of talent. Chris Bassett is one of the underrated pitchers in the league. Right now, I think the Blue Jays are going to be a lot better than they were last season, but I still don't know if they're going to be a playoff team. The Rays, like normal, had a quiet offseason. They did, however, bring in Han-Sung Kim, and because of their pitching and history of winning, you can never count them out. The team that many feel down on right now is the Baltimore Orioles, who were not big spenders. And I get it. They lose Corbin Burns, but they still have a decent pitching staff, and they are still loaded with young talent. I have to believe they are only going to get better and better. Jackson Holliday, for example, could start to play up to his potential, and Gunnar Henderson is a must-watch at bat. And they brought in good players in Charlie Morton, a veteran starter who is a two-time World Series winner, and Tyler O'Neill, who mashed baseballs last year, especially against lefties. The team I got winning this division is the Orioles. I know the Red Sox and Yankees had louder off seasons, but the team with the most talent on paper is still the Baltimore Orioles. Let's get into the players who I believe will take home some major hardware this season, starting with the AL Comeback Player of the Year, who I believe will be Felix Bautista. He's an all-star closer. He missed all of 2024, and I think people forget that the Orioles were relying heavily on Craig Kimbrell to close games in parts of last season. I mean, this is a major upgrade. This is a huge missing piece, and I believe this man will be one of the biggest reasons why the Orioles are one of the best teams in the American League. They may no longer have Corbin Burns, but they will have Felix Bautista, who will once again emerge as one of the best closers in baseball. It's worth noting that they also have a really good setup man in Yennier Cano. I think the Orioles bullpen is going to be one of their biggest strengths, and Felix Bautista is a huge reason why. There's a lot of ways I could go for the American League Cy Young Award winner, but the guy I'm going to go with is George Kirby. I keep hearing about how good this guy is. I think this is the year he emerges as the best pitcher in the American League, because I believe the Mariners need him to be the best pitcher in the American League for them to be a very good team. He's not the obvious name. He's not the flashiest choice. He's just a guy who I believe is going to have that breakout season we've been waiting for. He's been really, really good. I think next year is going to be his first truly great season as the ace of the Seattle Mariners, who have a great history of pitchers winning the Cy Young Award. I mean, Randy Johnson, Felix Hernandez. For the AL MVP, I feel like most people are probably either going to go with Aaron Judge or Bobby Witt Jr. No, that is not the guy I'm going to go with. The guy I am going with is Gunnar Henderson. This is a guy who is a must-see at bat for me. I believe he has a surprising amount of power for his size. I mean, this is a guy capable of hitting 45 to 50 home runs at the shortstop position. I think it's time for this guy to emerge as one of the best players in the sport. I think it's time for this guy to be recognized as the best player in the American League, and I think it will happen next season. He's a guy I am super high on. I know he plays the same position as Bobby Witt Jr. I know he's not as good defensively as Bobby Witt Jr. He is just a guy who I believe is going to be the reason the Orioles are a playoff team next season. This might be a weird thing to say, but I really do believe it's the truth. Like, all of the attention is on the National League right now because those are the teams that had the big off seasons. I mean, the Dodgers had a ridiculous amount of spending. We all know what the New York Mets did. I feel like a lot of people are down on the American League. Yes, people are talking about the Red Sox and the Yankees, but those teams didn't end up with the superstar players. It was all in the National League. So I feel like some people are down on the American League. For me, I look at it and say that the American League is going to be better this season than it was last year. The Red Sox are going to emerge. They're going to be a lot better. The Texas Rangers are going to be a lot better. Like I said, I predict they are going to win the division. I think the Astros are going to be consistent. These other teams are going to emerge. There's always going to be surprises. I think the Angels are going to be the biggest surprise in all of baseball this year because I really like the moves they made this past offseason, but they're not getting talked about because they're not the splashy moves. They didn't spend $600 million on one player, so no one is talking about them. And there does seem to be this feeling of inevitability that no matter which team in the American League makes it to the World Series, that they are ultimately going to lose to the LA Dodgers. And I understand that feeling because the Dodgers feel like a behemoth that you're never going to get past. But still, there are a lot of teams in the American League that I am excited by going into this season. And there are a lot of storylines to follow, like the Blue Jays with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Are they really going to lose this cornerstone of their franchise without trading him away? I mean, are they really going to let Vladimir Guerrero Jr. have a walk season, or are they going to get to the deadline, not be a very good team, and trade him away? Like, that is something to keep an eye on. For the first time in a long time, I feel good about most of the teams in the American League. Like, I think they are trying to win games. They made decent moves this offseason. Now, are all of those moves going to pay off? Absolutely not. Some of the teams that I predicted to be good on this podcast are not going to be good. But most of the teams are making an effort. What doesn't help the American League is they did lose some star power this offseason. I mean, Juan Soto left the Yankees to join the Mets. Kyle Tucker was traded from the Astros to the Chicago Cubs. The two biggest stars in the American League are no doubt Aaron Judge and Bobby Witt Jr. After that, the guys are not household names. They are stars. Tariq Skubal is not yet a household name. Julio Rodriguez and Gunnar Henderson, I believe, are on the verge of becoming ones. The splashy moves were all made in the National League, but the solid ones were made in the American League. Like, I think the quiet, good offseason moves are going to pay off for a number of these teams. The Angels, Yankees, and Rangers, I all believe had excellent off seasons, and I think all three of them are going to compete for playoff positions. And same goes for the Boston Red Sox. My final take on the American League is, unlike the National League, there is no dominant team. I mean, the Yankees are not the Dodgers. They just lost Juan Soto. They are not viewed as this 100-win powerhouse. I believe they're still going to be very good, but there's a chance they don't end up with the best record in the league. I could see that being the Texas Rangers. I could see that being the Baltimore Orioles. There's more room for surprise contenders in the American League, and maybe I'm being biased because I'm a fan of the Red Sox, so I'm clearly going to see more American League baseball this year than the National League, but still, I am high on the American League right now because I love the offseason that all of these teams had. And some of the best talent in the sport is still in the American League. Aaron Judge, Bobby Witt Jr., Mike Trout if he remains healthy, Gunnar Henderson, Jose Ramirez. Something that can sometimes be frustrating about baseball that you don't always see in the other sports is sometimes the best players don't play during the postseason. I mean, Mike Trout infamously has only played in 3 postseason games, and the other player I'm thinking of is Julio Rodriguez. Like, I really want to see those two players play in October, and the sport needs its biggest stars playing in the biggest games. And that's something that the National League had over the American League in that last season, is that Shohei Ohtani goes to the NL. He was ignored for the longest time playing for the Angels. He goes to the Dodgers and right away wins a World Series. Playing in October makes you a bigger star in the sport of baseball, and I hope those two stars, Mike Trout and Julio Rodriguez, get to the postseason, please. Thanks for listening to this edition of Head to Head. I'm Cam McKinney, and there'll be a new episode of the podcast every Monday on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And if you liked my preview of the American League this week, wait till next week when I talk about the National League.